what you want, when you want it, where you want it. This is The Mesh.
Footcandle Films. Film news and reviews from two guys who really like movies.
This episode is brought to you by the Footcandle Film Society. For a schedule of upcoming screenings and membership information, visit the Society's website at www.footcandle.org.
Hello everyone, welcome to Footcandle Films here on themesh.tv. My name is Alan.
I'm Chris.
And we're here to welcome you to our discussion show where we talk about films, movies, we give a few reviews, we talk about some movie news, give our recommendations of films you may want to check out from the past. Just a whole lot of film stuff going on. I hope if you're listening to this and you don't like movies, you may have found the wrong podcast. I'm just saying that. I'm not trying to scare away listeners, mind you. You're welcome to listen.
There are other shows on The Mesh that might be more to your liking. Yeah. We have, shows about music, I'm with the band, stuff like that. But if you like movies, you have stumbled upon the right one.
Maybe, even if they don't like movies, maybe they like the sound of our voices.
That could be
because we both have such dynamic, radio-friendly voices.
Absolutely. They just soothe one right into
the irony dripping from that statement is deep. Right. So welcome to Footcandle Films here on themesh.tv. Today's show, we've actually got a couple good films to talk about, some good reviews to discuss. We're going to be reviewing the film The Imitation Game, one that Mr. Benedict Cumberbatch getting a lot of Oscar buzz right now. Mm-hmm. And then we're also going to be reviewing a film that's kind of on the other end of the spectrum, one that didn't get a lot of, I don't think, any theatrical release.
I don't think so.
May have gone straight to video on demand, but yet got some good buzz behind it, a film called Predestination, starring a Mr. Ethan Hawke, who, synergy-wise, is also up for Best Supporting Actor for Boyhood, not for Predestination. So a little Oscar thing we're tying in with that film as well. We'll review both those films, then we'll circle back and do a little movie news, give you a few updates on some projects we've been following and listening about. Then we'll end up the show, both of us giving our online recommendation, a film we think you ought to check out one way or another. Either you saw in the past or maybe missed in the past. Either way, we want to bring it back to your attention and encourage you to check it out. Sound like a plan, Chris?
Yes.
Sounds great. Well, let's just not even waste any time, and let's jump right into our first review, which is the World War II drama film, The Imitation Game.
This war, we're not winning it. It's the greatest encryption device in history, and the Germans use it for all communications.
Everyone thinks Enigma is unbreakable.
Let me try, and we'll know for sure.
What is it that we're really doing?
We're going to break an unbreakable Nazi code and win the war.
Oh.
To pull off this irascible genius routine, one actually has to be a genius.
I'm designing a machine that will allow us to break every message, every day, instantly.
Back during World War II, Chris, there's a mathematician named Alan Turing.
Okay.
He was brought in by the British government to figure out how to break the Enigma code, which is what the Germans were using, the Nazi army was using to transmit messages between all of their various armies. Alan Turing, famous mathematician, but really not someone we knew a whole lot about with regards to his involvement with the birth of the modern day computer and the Enigma machine until really the last 20 years or so, because this was a project that was kept very secret for, I believe, about 50 years after it took place. You have Benedict Cumberbatch starring as Alan Turing. Benedict Cumberbatch, you may know as Smaug from Lord of the Rings movies, Sherlock from the BBC series, Khan from Star Trek. So he's played a lot of genre parts for sure.
Right.
This is, I think, the first film I know of from a big picture that he's doing that's a heavy drama, historical, a little more Oscar bait screaming for type of thing. First film he's really done in that caliber.
Wait a second. So the Hobbit films aren't historical?
Sure. No, they really happened, Chris. It's okay. They all happened. All right. It's all documented. All happened.
So dragons are real?
Dragons are absolutely real.
Cool.
Yeah, no problem. Benedict Cumberbatch, we've got Keira Knightley starring as one of his partners, someone who joins the team at Bletchley Park to work on the Enigma code. Matthew Good as a fellow mathematician brought into the team as well. The director, Morton Tildum, I don't know anything about him.
I am unfamiliar
I believe
with him
he's
as well.
just done some smaller British projects before, but nothing quite this big. So, Chris, here's my question to you.
Sure.
I don't like biopics. I don't like films that are focusing on one famous person's life and try to cram as much of that person's life into a film as possible.
Right.
What I do like, though, are films that are exploring an event in history. Not one person, but an event, something in a more of a collapsed time frame where I can really dig into that event. This is a kind of a hybrid where I'm not going to go as far as to say it's a biopic, but yet it definitely has some of the same trappings of a traditional biopic. But it is really focused on this time at Bleckley Park where they're working on the code breaking.
Right.
So let me just toss it back to you.
Sure.
Walking out of this theater, does this fall into the same traps as a traditional biopic that you and I have both railed about in the past? Me maybe a little louder than you. Did it have anything more going to it for it other than the traditional biopic? And did it have anything more going for it than screaming for Oscar bait, which a lot of films this time of year will do?
I mean, yeah, I think when you release a biopic, traditional or non-traditional, in the November, December timeframe, you're gunning. You're gunning for an Oscar. I mean, you've got
the hook, you got the bait on the hook, you've tossed it out in the water. That's what you're trying to do.
We've got Imitation Game. We've got Theory of Everything. We've got Get On Up, which actually was released earlier for the James Brown biopic. But you have all these. I'm missing one too. There's one other one that I'm missing. But,
Selma, I wouldn't consider a biopic because again, it's focused on a particular event. It's not trying to cram this person's life into a movie.
It just happens to talk about obviously Martin Luther King.
Right.
But yeah, so I will say it's an interesting. I think they tried to get away. Maybe they've heard our comments before about how we.
They probably listen to the show.
Yeah, they probably do. How we do not care for traditional biopics because they tend to be overreaching.
Yeah.
So I think they tried to avoid that by narrowing the focus of this down to the event that you're discussing, the Enigma machine and the World War II aspect and his contribution to that.
Really, the whole time period of the main storyline was really maybe just, a 2-3 year period of time?
Correct. Yeah, because the war has already started.
Right.
They've already been trying to break the machine, and then they bring him in.
And it basically goes until the end of the war. So
right. I admire them for trying to stray from the formula, and I think in that respect it was refreshing. But all too often they dipped back. So basically there are 3 time frames in this movie.
Yes,
there is 1950s. I'm going to say to where basically he is he's under police suspicion. There's a robbery at his house, and there's all this tumult and the police start investigating him, basically. So there's that time frame. Then there's the time frame that you're talking about, the World War II code
early
machine.
40s. Yeah.
And then they flash to his childhood.
Which I imagine is in the late 20s, 30s, somewhere in there.
Yeah, something like that. And for me, they dipped once too often back to the childhood, to the 20s or 30s, when he was a young boy growing up in a boarding school, I guess, or a preparatory school. And once or twice would have been okay because it kind of sets the tone, but they started straying into trying to cover too much of his life and to try to explain away his personality and kind of push your nose into certain aspects and be like, here, this is why he is the way he is. And it's like, no, why don't you just let us kind of come to that rationalization or that realization ourselves? The guy, Alan Turing, not knowing anything about him before this movie, didn't know anything about I had heard of an Enigma device, and I knew that eventually it had gotten broken, and that's about it. I didn't know the guy's name, didn't know that he kind of was the forefather of computers, didn't know any of that. He is a very interesting person, and at first what worried me about the movie too was that Cumberbatch, when he first is on screen, and I think we're seeing him at the very beginning. I think he's doing the 1950s time period, and then they go back to the World War II time period, and then they start jumping all over the place. But those 2 periods, I felt like at first I was a little scared because I'd heard, he is nominated for this performance and I was worried that all he was doing his Sherlock impression, which I like the show Sherlock. I think he is a good actor, and he has that part of playing the aloof, arrogant jerk who's very smart, but is kind of a jerk and has no social skills. He was basically, to me, in the beginning of the film, he was doing Sherlock.
There was a little bit of that, mixing in Sheldon Cooper from The Big Bang Theory. I mean, you've kind of got...
Okay.
It's like take Sherlock, but give him a hard, antisocial, awkward bit to him, taking people literally and just all that. You mix that in, and I think that's the performance you've got,
Yeah, I hadn't thought about the Sheldon Big Bang Theory. But yes, yeah. And so it worried me that it was playing at something rather than just doing a role kind of. But I will say that faded away. And when he becomes more human and he has some emotional moments and you can see the cracks in his exterior. I mean, not that some of it is real. He does have personality quirks and stuff, but he does have this kind of, I think he also works at putting up a facade. I mean, he's able to function. He's able to cook his own meals and do it. You know, he's not like he's completely dependent on other people to function in society. But when you got to see him be a little more human, that was when I was like, okay, you know, he's working at something more. It was a good performance. What your feelings on how it handled kind of the whole biopic?
I was fine with that side of it. This is one of those few instances where I was okay with this being a dramatic film as opposed to a documentary.
Okay.
I actually enjoyed it more as a story than I probably would have as just telling me the facts and showing me the any photos or anything else.
Okay.
I really did like Benedict Cumberbatch's performance. I, like you, was scared at first. I thought it was going to be all affectation and not a lot to it. But as the film went on, I agree with you. I think the performance got stronger as it went on. I didn't have a problem with the flashbacks to him as a child. That to me worked because it did help really build that foundation for his, the naming of the computer and kind of his some of the side of that. I was okay with all that. I didn't like the flashing forward and backwards constantly, where it's just like, pick one time period to flip us to. Don't flip us both sides. Because a couple of times I got a little confused.
I got confused too. Now, granted, I saw this starting at 10:30 at night. Yeah. So I thought that was part of my problem. But actually, at the end of the film, I think they did it, unfortunately, because they felt like the story wasn't interesting enough on its own. And they did it to kind of not confuse you, but to heighten the tension of like, oh, this is happening, but we're going to jump away from that and show you maybe some of his personality stuff and why. And then they kept jumping. It didn't work. If they just would have let it play out. I agree. But instead they were kind of impatient.
And even if they were intent on doing this 3 time period, I think the structure of the story didn't work the way they did it.
Right.
I think you could have pulled it off a different way through some different editing and different framing of the story. The way it was very abrupt changing sometimes between the time periods, and you're just like, okay, wait a minute, I got to reorient my brain where I am, and we shouldn't, as a viewer, shouldn't be doing that.
Unless the motive of this movie is to make you think and to make you keep it, but that's not what they're trying to do. They're trying to
tell you a story and give you some background information on where it is now.
It's not an M. Night Shyamalan movie.
Right.
It's supposed to be,
I thought Keira Knightley was really good. She's generally a good performer I enjoy watching. I thought she was good and strong in this. I liked the story a lot. I really did. Okay. The story behind it was fascinating to me. This is a story I did not know much about. I was really intrigued by the story. There's the question of how much of it's true. I mean, it's just like with any other film based on a real event. How much is over-dramatized? How much was real? That always plays in the back of your head with these films, and I hate that we do that, but I think that's a human nature thing. I was happy to see that they, going into the film, one of the things that was talked about with the film is the fact that there's the whole homosexuality side of Alan Turing's life that played a part in the story. I was happy to see that it was a small subplot. Maybe it wasn't as strong played in the film as it could have been, but I actually liked the way they didn't let it overwhelm the story. The story really was enigma, where I was afraid it was going to be the homosexuality and not the actual goal that they're accomplishing. And I like the fact that it was a little bit of an undercurrent subplot, rose its head a little bit more towards the end, especially in the flash forward to the 50s, but it didn't become this overwhelming point of the film.
Agreed. And I think actually my problem with the flashbacks to the youth part when he was a young boy was that they were kind of establishing that he was gay. Right. But instead of letting us understand that on our own, they kept kind of like pointing it out, and that kind of bothered me.
It was a little blunt, I'll admit, sure, but it didn't bother me. But I can see where you're coming from on that. Now, I'll also say too that even though this is a film that is obviously custom made for Oscar season, it could have been a lot more Oscar baity than it was. I think they actually showed a little more restraint than I thought they might. From the overdone scenes, the big Oscar clips. I mean, Benedict Cumberbatch had 1 or 2 late in the film that were very much, that's the clip they're going to show when they show the clip up on the screen for his performance. But I think on a scale from 1 to 10, where they could have gone all 10, and I can name several films over the past 10 years where you just know that's exactly what they were trying to do. This one held back a little bit better. They actually made it a little more of an entertaining film, which I thought was good. A little more humor, a little more thrilling moments. It was less of a, let's just go through and play on emotions. Let's actually have a little fun with it sometimes. And I think there was some fun in the film as well. I will say the things I didn't like, I already mentioned. I thought the skipping between the 3 time periods was not as well managed as it should be.
Okay. So we're basically, you and I are kind of on the same page with that. And I guess that's fault of the screenplay, which is also Oscar nominated.
Again, I didn't see the reason for have the presence in the 50s.
Right.
I think you could have accomplished everything you're trying to do in this film with the childhood and the actual main story in the 40s.
I guess, use it more as bookends as opposed to keep sprinkling it out throughout the film. Yeah.
Or if you were going to frame everything in the 50s and have everything be a flashback to the 40s when the actual stuff was going on, that's fine. But don't flash us back again to the 30s and it just got too much.
Changing gears too much. I like that.
There was a subplot late in the film about a Soviet spy inside the group, and that subplot to me went nowhere and honestly didn't even really make sense at the end of the day. The only the only actor I did not care for in this was Mark Strong, who was the MI6 guy.
Wow.
And only because it's Mark Strong playing the stereotypical
I didn't like Mark Strong's hair.
Well, I didn't even notice his hair, but you know what it was, Chris? It was the whole point where
you're dropping a really well-known actor into a cameo, and he's just chewing this.
And I just get to I get to say the really pithy lines. I get to have the real presence on screen, but there's no real depth to me. What really killed me is early in the film, Charles Dance, who I really do like. He was the actual commander, I guess, the one who actually hired Alan in the first place.
Okay. I recognized his face, but I didn't know his name.
Well, my wife was actually watching on Netflix just 2 nights ago, The Golden Child, the Eddie Murphy film from the 80s.
Whoa.
The really bad Eddie Murphy action-adventure movie.
Sure.
And Charles Dance was the bad guy.
Did he still look just as old?
Oh, yeah.
He's always looked
actually,
that way.
Alex saw both films. And he's just like, has there been any time passed between these two films?
Actually, yes, quite a bit.
Like 30 years. Anyway, but they're getting the mathematician team together and introducing them to the Enigma machine, kind of telling them what their mission is.
Right.
And they're asking these questions, they're saying these things, and they're starting to be a little defensive on things. And all of a sudden, Mark Strong's character kind of
floats
walks
into
in
the room
from the side. It's like, well, that's why we have you here, type of thing, kind of like this big presence. That just kills me. It's just so overscripted and just unnatural. So his performance, I didn't care for because I thought I wanted more depth to his character, but I liked everybody else in the film. What do you think about the acting?
The acting, Keira Knightley, take her or leave her, actually. I liked, what's the guy's name again that played the commander?
Charles Dance.
Yeah, I thought he was awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Cumberbatch is awesome. I liked Matthew Good and Mark Strong. I actually liked both of them.
I like Matthew Good.
But I was frustrated at the end of the day, more so with Mark Strong. I like him as an actor anyway. Mm-hmm. And yeah, he was kind of playing to a type that he often plays, but I felt like it was a fact of it being too thinly written.
Yeah, well,
and they didn't give him quite enough to do, because I think his role as kind of a shadow figure watching this whole thing and controlling certain aspects that nobody was aware of. And then he eventually tells Turing, hey, guess what? By the way, this is happening. And I felt like it was too thinly written. And I thought Hugh was a lot more interesting. And maybe it was just what Matthew Good was kind of doing, but I thought that, and I felt like that kind of fell by the wayside.
I like the Matthew Good character. I thought he was good. Again, everybody on there I really enjoyed watching. I like the chemistry between some of the members of the team.
I'll say too, overall, like you're saying, I think the film it's a good film, but there were some instances where I felt like they were being a little heavy-handed dramatically. Now, granted, this is World War II. It's a very dramatic situation. It's a very serious time. It's a very momentous time. But it's like the bombarding of London, and it was kind of a protracted scene of the bombardment, but then also going underground and all these tunnels and everything, and to the point where they actually have a shot of a guy playing an accordion, and you hear the accordion music, and I was like, okay.
Well, and it didn't fit the rest of the film.
No.
The whole rest of the film, we're kind of just focused all our energy inside the park where they are working. We're not seeing the rest of the world.
And that's
I actually like that. I like the fact that
because it focuses on how they were isolated and how they
Because, for example, there's later in the scene where we find out that because of some of the work they're doing, certain things are now available for them to do, but they have to make a conscious decision not to do something. And I like the fact that we're dealing with this drama inside this room, but it wasn't this big montage of like a ship exploding and people dying and all that. Unfortunately, we saw the aftermath shot, which I didn't like. But at least I felt like we were inside the room dealing with it the same way they were dealing with it. I wish they had done that the whole film. I would have been happy if they didn't show any of the bombing. We were just hearing the reports about it coming into that room just like they would have if, naturally,
And the scene you just talked about where the information was becoming available and they had to make a judgment call, that's my other heavy-handed scene. Mm-hmm. And it was because the way they handled it, it was kind of a 2-stage development in that scene. The scene talks about the information. They realize the implications of whether or not of acting on it or not acting. And they have this whole discussion. You realize the weight, and then okay. But instead, they add this extra, okay, now we're going to get. You thought we were hitting you with a sledgehammer. That was just a baseball bat. Now we're getting out the sledgehammer. We're going to hit. Me not knowing the history of this. If that instance was based on something that actually happened, then you have to say, well, that actually happened. So they're not just making it up for dramatic effect. And maybe it did. But that bothered me just in the back of my mind. I was like, okay, they couldn't just let it, the note couldn't just be played and let it resonate. Instead, they had to play it again and really hit that note really hard.
Sure. Yeah, I could see that.
That bothered me. But.
It didn't bother me, but I see your point on that. I'm very open to your criticism on the film because even though I really did like the film, there's definitely some problems with it. There were some things that were clunky. The whole framework, the flashbacks, flash forwards did not work at all for me. But in general, the story was captivating.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. I really liked Benedict Cumberbatch's performance. Once he got into the flow of things, and I felt like it was no longer a caricature, but there was a real character behind it. I will say the end scene, the coda scene, which is a little bit further in the future, I still can't quite place where it happened. If it was before the 50s, it was after the 50s stuff we've already seen. So it's after he's already been accused.
So is this the scene with Keira Knightley?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's the scene everybody could point to and say is the big Oscar scene, but I thought it was really, really well done. We find out where he is. We find out what he's going through, both physically, mentally.
And there again, I think if that had... Yes, I agree. I think that scene was
That scene actually worked really well. It was very passionate. It was a very powerful film.
I feel like it was well done.
Scene.
They couldn't leave enough alone, and they had to jump back again right after that.
Well, they jumped back, and then they did the text on the screen, which I always hate the text on the screen at the end of the film. That basically just spells out the entire rest of his life for you in like 3 screens of text.
Right.
With them around the bonfire throwing the books into the fire.
Right.
Yeah, I kind of would have been happy. There was a shot where he basically, in that coda scene, that last couple dramatic scene, where he goes into the room where the computer's setting up and he shuts the lights off and walks out. That in the film right there.
Agreed.
Don't do anything
Agreed.
else. Yeah.
Agreed. Actually, I would say end it right there, but if you wanted to do a little bit of text, do it on black.
Just a black screen afterwards. Or even as he's leaving the room.
We're fixing an already perfect movie.
Or as he's turning off the lights, do the text during that scene where he's kind of stumbling into the room, turn off the lights and walks out of the room. That's fine. But then to go back and do another scene there back in the 40s, it was too much. And they didn't need to do all this to make this a really effective film, I didn't think. So,
yeah, in my opinion, no.
Yeah. Overall, though, I did like it, I will say. It's not my choice for best film of the nominees I've seen so far. I'll go ahead and say that. I would probably, this is going to be blasphemous to a lot of people, I would probably give it the nod before I gave it to Boyhood. But I still wouldn't give it anywhere close to Birdman. And of course,
we're going to have to, we're going to do a show where we give our picks of what we want to win and what we think will win. I'm going to have to I'm really torn over Best Picture this year.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough one. Everybody seems to say it's going to be Boyhood, but I don't know. I'm actually hearing a lot more for some other films. Selma's gotten a lot of attention. American Sniper's tearing up the box office, which I don't think is going to make a huge difference on its Oscar choices, but it's actually...
Is it shooting up the box office?
Yes.
Sorry.
But it's actually getting in the conversation now where it wasn't several weeks ago.
Right.
It's a much tighter race than I think we realized it was going to be on this. So that's The Imitation Game. Obviously, we will be hearing its name over the next several weeks as we lead up to Oscar time. It is nominated for both Best Actor for Benedict Cumberbatch, nominated for Best Picture.
Correct. Best Director.
I think it's nominated for Best Director for Morton Tildum as well. I don't know if any other major...
Keira Knightley.
Is Keira Knightley nominated for Best Supporting Actress?
Yep. She is.
I don't know if she earned that one, but she's good. But well, okay. So it's got a lot. It's got a lot of acting awards and production awards across the board. So we'll see where it goes. All right, next we're going to talk about a film that did not go to the theaters, went straight to your desktop or your Apple TV or whatever you watch movies on. It is the time-traveling sci-fi film Predestination.
What if I could put him in front of you? The man that ruined your life. If I could guarantee that you'd get away with it. Would you kill him? Follow me right in here. Here we go. Deep breath. We're in 1963.
That's impossible.
I'm a temporal agent. We prevent crime before it takes place. The Fizzle Bomber. His next explosion will leave 11,000 dead. You can do this.
Alan, when we were prepping for this show, we knew we were going to review Imitation Game.
Yes.
And you said, hey, I just heard about this movie, heard a lot of good buzz. It's called Predestination. It was just released, I think, VOD, like January 9th. You know, it's just hot off the presses.
Yes.
It would be a cool one to kind of, do with Imitation Game because it's a smaller film.
Mm-hmm.
And then you threw out the L word. You said, yeah, it's kind of like Looper. And I'm like, oh, okay. Science fiction.
Hit a little Chris Fry nerve right there.
I mean, it's science fiction, okay, in the same ballpark as Looper, time traveling science fiction, okay, you've got me. So, but not knowing anything about this film, Ethan Hawke is the lead.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, this should be interesting. I will say within the first 10 minutes, maybe. There's some stuff going on in this film that I had no idea was going to be happening and was kind of mind-blowing and made me think, why are the Wachowski brothers, or brother and sister now, not doing this movie instead?
Mm-hmm.
You going in with all the stuff that you knew when you went to go in to see this movie, did it start off where you thought it was going, or did it take you by surprise? I'm interested to know.
It should have taken me by surprise, but unfortunately it didn't, because somewhere in the last few weeks, I kind of got a little more of a plot summary than I wanted to have.
Oh, man. So we're going to dance around. Obviously, we're dancing around things right now.
I will say this, though. Even despite knowing a couple of items, I didn't know the whole thing. There's still moments in the film that still got me.
Got you.
But the first 10, 15, 20 minutes of the film, I kind of knew where we were.
Oh, man.
I know.
Oh, man.
I know. It's disappointing. But I will say, I really did like this film.
Okay.
I'm still wrestling with it. I just saw it last night, but I think I'm following it.
Well, any movie that deals with time travel, you're going to have questions and problems.
Yeah.
I will say for the film, when a filmmaker or person doing something, if you take your subject matter seriously, then I'm going to take it seriously. If you're treating it lightheartedly, then I'm going to treat it lightheartedly. If you are loose with your movie logic, then I'll be loose with mine. But if you're trying to explain it, if you're trying to keep it tight, then I'm going to hold you to that.
Okay.
This film, I felt like kept it tight until the last 30 or 40 minutes or so, and then stuff just kind of started falling apart. Now, films that you and I have discussed on the show that have dealt with time travel, the aforementioned Looper, I feel like that was taking its subject matter very serious, and I felt like it held up. I didn't have any questions. Another one that we've discussed, Primer.
Yeah.
I felt like that held up. Very complicated.
Yes.
But I felt like it still held up. Doesn't have to do with time travel, but the Christopher Nolan movie about Inception.
Yeah.
Complicated, very nebulous, but still felt like it held up.
Right.
This film was holding up, and I was amazed that it was. But then it did kind of go off the rails for me. And
I know what you're talking about. Yeah. The ending is still problematic for me. I liked it, and I understand at the end of the day what the whole point was. It's just...
Do you?
Yeah, I do. Okay. I'm still trying to map it out in my head.
Sure.
How it all worked.
Well...
because, here, even though I did like the film, I admired it a lot. I guess, I automatically gave it a lot more of a pass because...
It's an indie budget.
It's an indie budget film.
I think it looks great.
Oh, it looks awesome.
Production design looks great.
And I will say, on record, again, going against my boyhood thing here, I think this is the best I've seen Ethan Hawke act in a really long time. He is really good.
I think he is really good.
I think especially...
he has to do more for me in this than he did. Boyhood, he was good, but he was just kind of playing a very natural, I'm a father growing older part. This was like... Yeah, this was much more demanding.
Here's what was really impressive about this film. Okay, you tell me it's a time traveling film with Ethan Hawke that went straight to video on demand, and I'm thinking, ugh.
That means it's bad.
That sounds horrible. And the fact of the matter is, this is a film that for almost a 20, 30-minute stretch of the film, the main action is taking place in a bar with two people having a dialogue.
Which was amazing.
And I think that's where I'm saying Ethan Hawke was so good because he's having to play a dual role in that whole scene. He knows what's going on in the bigger picture, but he's having to let on that he doesn't for so much of that dialogue with this other character. Well, and that to me, when I look back and watch that performance, I'm like, wow, that was really good. Then Ethan Hawke has a scene towards the end of the film. It may be in this part where everything's really unraveled, but I still say in the laundromat, the scene where he confronts another version of himself. I will just say that, okay? No, you don't want me to give it that. There's something about another version. That's all I'm going to say. Where it's a very intense dialogue. And I thought he nailed that part. I thought that was just perfectly over the top, creepy.
Right.
Just perfect. It was perfect.
Yeah.
So those scenes really got me. I'm like, okay, Ethan Hawke, man, I'll forgive you for how let down I was by some of your other recent performances. I really, really liked you.
Yeah, performance-wise, yes, I was with you. The movie logic at that point, like you were saying, it had kind of become...
It was a tricky logic at that point. But again, I'm just playing it from the acting that was in that scene. Thought was really sharp.
Let me touch on a strength of the film. I think you're a little bit more positive on it than I am, but I still liked it. And it has been a while since I've seen this. Mm-hmm. So with a film this confusing, even though you watched it just last night... and you're still confused, at least you can make reference points. I've kind of forgotten some of the intricacies of the film. But a big part of the film is the performance of Sarah Snook, which is the first time she has kind of a funny name. It's the first time I'd ever heard of her.
Yep.
And I thought she was amazing. I thought she was really good. Thought she was amazing. And it's too bad that... I hope she has a lot of work ahead of her because this is like a breakout performance that I actually think would kind of be like, if this wasn't such a crazy, weird film, this would actually be like an Oscar-nominated performance. That's how big... I kept imagining like Tilda Swinton doing her role.
Now, I'll say this, and I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this without giving anything away. She plays different parts. Can we just say different parts?
I think you can just say it because it happens very early in the film, and this is told, which... This is what I'll go ahead and say that I danced around a little bit, but it doesn't ruin anything of the film. If you think this is going to ruin the film, advance like 10 minutes, and you'll get to our movie recommendations, and you'll be fine, or the news section, you'll be fine. She plays a character that was basically she was forced to have gender reassignment surgery. She started out life as a female, and then some really messed up stuff happened, and she had to be a male. Yeah. That is crazy. And in the front, I was like, whoa, what is going on? And I could not believe how the movie was basically said a lot about like gender roles and a lot about your position in society as a female and how you're reacted to and what you're quote unquote worth as opposed to when you are a male and how you're perceived and what you're worth then. Like I thought all that was amazing. Like in the science fiction genre, they can make... It was kind of like would have been a very controversial Star Trek episode because you know how they would tackle topics of race and stuff like that. Like they were tackling that, and I was like, "Wow, this is really interesting." And I had no idea any of that stuff was going to be going on because all I knew was time travel. That's all I knew. So I really, really admired the film for that, and I think I got so stuck on like, "Wow, where is this going to go? How are they going to?" And they did some interesting things with it, but then it kind of ended up, I think, shortchanging it and dumbing it down, and it kind of unraveled for me. Does that make sense? But I thought that aspect was really interesting.
Sarah Snook, I was going to say too, I thought was great.
Okay.
And I thought she was extraordinary in her female role.
Okay.
In the male role, it's a tougher role to play. It was a little less convincing for me of somebody that had gone through what they've gone through. But I thought it was still pretty good. I thought it was still pretty good. But I heard in the female side, I thought she was just really exciting to watch. Here's a big issue I've gotten. Again, dancing around things. Sure. But this is an issue I've kind of, after I sat back and thought about it afterwards. When you have a film that starts out and there's a scene that pretty early on there is a shadowy figure.
Oh, and if you don't show the face, then that means something.
You know it's going to be a character we're going to meet before too long. This film only has 3 characters.
Right.
So there's actually 2 places in the film where there is a shadowy character.
Absolutely.
And it's like automatically your brain is then saying, well, there's only 3 people.
I know who this is.
There's only 3 people, and it's not the one that this shadowy character is talking to, so it's got to be this other person.
Right.
And that, to me, was very distracting.
It was ridiculously distracting to me.
If you're going to have a mystery film with that kind of layer and complexity to it, you have to have more characters involved to choose from.
Right.
Because you can't just have two main characters and well, it's probably going to be one of those two. I mean, that just really, and then when you start figuring that out halfway through the film, you're like, okay, well, yeah, so obviously that person is here. That's the way it's got to be because they haven't introduced anybody else yet.
Right.
That's a little disappointing. It's a little bit of a limitation of the story, limitation of budget, all those things. It's just they couldn't have they needed a much deeper film to make those mysteries resonate more with us. Well, but as it was, the mysteries didn't have quite the punch they could have had. I don't think towards the end, if we had more things going on, characters.
And I think it's a weakness of the screenplay. They're attacking screenplays this episode because the direction I thought was fine. I wasn't confused really with stuff.
No, me neither.
But I think there's a character that we haven't touched on. It's an actor that I really like who's actually in The Double. There's a smaller role there, but Noah Taylor.
Yeah, Noah Taylor.
And he has kind of more of a cameo role in this, but he plays kind of the mentor of the Ethan Hawke character. Mm-hmm. And I think if they would have developed him a little more, that could have added a little bit more of the mystery and could have fleshed it out a little bit more.
I will say one other thing I really did like. I love the way they handled the time travel effect. Where it was almost like when they beamed to another time, it was like almost like a rush of air around them. And it was like instantaneous, like flash. Like there was no like fancy special effects. It's just they're gone and then they're there. Mm-hmm. But yet there's this almost like this puff of wind around them, almost like they've really just arrived somewhere. Mm-hmm. That I thought was just really handled really well. I liked that practical look of it.
I thought it was too, and I liked it was like a trombone case.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I like that it was kind of like a steampunk method where it's like, these little numbers, like dialing a code to get into the box, but it would set numbers. I liked that whole aesthetic.
And that kind of talking about the aesthetic, that did bring to me a question. I mean, I guess it's just the writer and the director's choice to set this all in the 70s and 60s, 70s, and 80s.
Right.
When we're talking about time travel, but yet the origin point of time travel was what they say, the 80s?
Yes. So sometime it had been invented in the 80s, which here we are, 2014.
Yeah.
It's like,
I thought that was kind of interesting, unless they really just wanted to make sure the flashbacks of them going back in time were in the 60s and 70s, because they really wanted that time period because of the gender roles and some of the other things.
And it had to do with space travel and stuff like that.
And that's the other part. This whole space travel business
never went anywhere.
And I was fascinated by it when it was on screen, but then it didn't go anywhere. And it was kind of a disappointment to put that much time and energy into developing this as something that this character wanted to do, but it didn't go anywhere. Right. It was disappointing with that. It was a film that I feel like if they had more time, more budget, more support behind them, they probably could have fleshed this out a lot more. As it was a 97-minute movie with just a bare minimum number of characters to develop. It could have been a lot better.
Sure.
As it is, I'm going to give it a pass and say I did really like it because I think it was trying to do something really cool. And I did like what it was trying to do. And I did like watching Sarah Snook. I will say she was really interesting to watch in the film.
Sure. I think I'm on the same page with you. I think you liked it a little more than me, but I'm still, like, for people who like science fiction or for people, I would say you've got to see this movie. It's one I would recommend.
Hey, you can rent it for about $5 or $6 and watch it in the comfort of your own home. So right away, I will say, Chris, a film like this and a film like Snowpiercer that we reviewed a few months ago.
Oh, see, that's funny. That's a good two indie sci-fi films. I would actually weigh this above Snowpiercer.
See, Snowpiercer's a little bit ahead for me.
Okay.
But I will say, just how exciting is it that two films like that, genre films, well-crafted, well-made films, we got to see when they came out.
Yeah.
For a few dollars rental.
Yeah.
In the convenience of our own home. I love the movie theater. Don't get me wrong, but Snowpiercer was never going to come anywhere near Hickory, where we live.
So if we wanted to see it,
this film would probably not have come to Hickory.
Right. If we wanted to see it before like 7 months had passed, and we'd probably forgotten about it because we,
It basically means that filmmakers are no longer shackled to thinking that they have to have a movie that goes through the traditional theater chain.
Right.
Because in the past, if the film didn't go through the theaters, where would it end up? It would end up on the bargain bin DVD shelf at Walmart.
Because it can't make any money because nobody's heard of it.
Right.
Yeah.
So then it just dies away, and you could have gems out there that you never know about, but they're gone on DVD and you never hear about them. Nowadays, if a film comes out on iTunes, Amazon, anywhere, and anybody's talking about it online, people hear about it, and all of a sudden we rush to go rent it. This is a whole exciting world for watching films that we never would have got a chance to see or would have missed on before.
Well, I think it was only helped by the the movie. It was already, taking off, but the movie that we discussed on the last episode we did, The Interview, that was a huge movie. And then it was forced to use that distribution model.
Yeah.
So, it's
just exciting. I still want to go to the movie theater to see the big movies.
Sure.
But I know not every movie made can go to my local multiplex. So knowing that I don't have to never see it is a really nice comfort feeling. So
agreed.
So that's our 2 film reviews. We talked about The Imitation Game and we talked about Predestination. Both of them getting positive reviews from us.
Yes.
Chris, a little more muted on both. I was a little more positive on both of them than Chris was. But
I'm going to be the naysayer this episode.
We're both saying they're good films to check out.
Sure.
And got some great qualities to them. So they're both Predestination's available online now for renting. Imitation Game still in the movie theaters at the time of this recording. Let's take a quick little break. Come back. We'll do some movie news, and then we'll also hit our recommendations for the episode. Sound good?
Sounds good. Be right back.
All right. See you then.
We'll get back to your show in a moment. Just a reminder, you're listening to The Mesh, an online media network of shows and programs ranging from business to arts, sports to entertainment, music to community. All programs are available on the website as well as through iTunes and YouTube. Find out more at themesh.tv and give us feedback on what you like. And now, as promised, back to your show.
Welcome back to Footcandle Films here on themesh.tv. If you like what we're doing here, you enjoy listening to us talk about movies, you enjoy the soothing nature of our voices, you can go back in time, just like Predestination, Mr. Ethan Hawke. You can go back in time. You don't even need a trombone case to do it. Go all the way back to listen to any old episode of Footcandle Films on themesh.tv website. We've been doing this for quite a while now, reviewing films for a couple of years now. So a lot of episodes you can go back and catch up on.
And they're also conveniently archived in iTunes. You can go back and find all
That's very true.
there.
Apple
and
iTunes, we have them all there.
If you're going to do that, why not rate us while you're there? Because, hey, that helps more people see our podcast. We get more listeners.
It's a simple thing to do. There's a little star. There's 5 stars. You click whatever star number you want to give us. It's 1 click. If you're really feeling industrious, you can even write a review and let us know what you think of the show as well.
There you go.
Also, subscribe to the show. Let's say that you're one of those people, you're real busy, you're a go-getter, you're always on the road. You don't always remember to go and check the website to see if there's a new episode of Footcandle Films. Well, guess what? You don't have to. Take your favorite podcast application, even the podcast application on your iPhone, if you just want to use the built-in one, or anything else. Go and subscribe to the show in iTunes. Say, I want to subscribe to it. Then what will happen is every time we put out a new episode, it'll get downloaded automatically to your podcast app. It'll be there ready for your morning run, your evening drive home, whatever it may be. So we really would love the support and feedback. So iTunes is the best way to do that. And then you've also got the mesh.tv, which is a network of all the other shows on the Mesh Network. You can take a listen to and play any of those episodes you like as well. So Chris, we get into the part of the show where we talk about some movie news. And we normally kind of go ping pong back and forth, a couple of news items here, things that we're interested in. Maybe we want to check and see how the other side of the table is feeling about it. If it's okay, I'm going to go first because my news can't contain itself anymore.
Okay.
I don't know if you've heard this. There is a new Ghostbusters film coming out.
Yes.
It'll be a third Ghostbusters. It will be a reboot of Ghostbusters, so it's not going to be a sequel from what I understand. Okay. In other words, they're not acknowledging that there were
referencing anything.
Not to my knowledge at this time.
Okay.
Written and directed by Paul Feig, who did Bridesmaids and The Heat, both with Melissa McCarthy.
Yes.
All right. Now, I liked Bridesmaids. Thought that was a funny movie.
I did too.
I never saw The Heat.
I'd even heard that Bridesmaids was good. So I went in with kind of pretty good expectations, and it managed to meet them and exceed them. Yeah. And I liked Bridesmaids.
It was good. Never saw The Heat, so I can't attest to that.
I did.
Yeah, not so good.
And I didn't like it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the official female Ghostbusters have been announced. Oh, you're already starting to wince a little bit.
I do. I know 2 of them. The other 2 you have to fill me in on. But
sure.
I know that McCarthy is back on board.
Of course she is.
And I am very, 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 very worried about that. I think she is a talented person. It's just the variety that she's been given so far, whether she's chosen it. I know Tammy, I think she actually did the writing on Tammy. Yeah. I didn't see Tammy, but because the previews I didn't want to. It's like she's kind of hitting a one-note comedic performance.
There is a very, very good chance.
I'm very afraid that she's going to
we have Melissa McCarthy. as we've already mentioned. Kristen Wiig,
Hey.
who was the star of Bridesmaids.
On board with
I
her.
like Kristen Wiig.
Me
Happy
too.
about that. Kate McKinnon,
Who is she?
Saturday Night Live, as well as Leslie Jones, who is also Saturday Night Live.
Okay, see, here again.
I'll fill you in on these two
Okay,
characters.
because these are people that I've lost. Saturday Night Live, and I have just stopped being friends.
Well, that's a
we
shame.
don't return each other's calls.
It misses you. It told me.
And I get a little hello memo from like Jenny Slate doing Obvious Child, which I recommended, and I really like. But in general, I think I do need to spend more time with Sarah.
I'll tell you what, you do need to look up Kate McKinnon.
Okay.
Because she is a comedic powerhouse. She
Really? Is she relatively new, or has she been on the show for
maybe
a while?
3 years now.
Oh, gosh. Okay.
She's very, very good.
Okay.
She's probably right now the strongest performer they've got on the show.
Really?
Very, very funny. Great impressionist. A lot of manic energy. Very odd sense of humor too. I mean, just very particular. It's good. So I'm excited, really excited to see her on the list.
Okay.
Now, Leslie Jones.
Who is she?
She's also a performer on Saturday Night Live now. She was a writer for several years.
Interesting.
She was added to the show about the time that SNL was getting all the heat for not having enough African-American females on the show.
Okay.
They added one, and then they just added Leslie. She was a bit player. She was doing like one little bit on Weekend Update every once in a blue moon, a little bit she did. But then they added her as now a featured player, meaning she's in some of the skits regularly.
Gotcha.
She's funny, and I'm sure in a stand-up world and probably on the screen with scripted lines, she's going to be hilarious. Problem is, I've just seen her way too much on live TV with SNL, and she's not very good live. She's has a hard time with lines, tripping up lines a lot. It's tough.
Gotcha.
She's still trying to find her way. So I was a little surprised to see her name on there already because she really has just got into this acting presence in the last maybe 6 months.
It's kind of surprising she was able to land it.
Well, she had a really interesting part, from what I understand, in Chris Rock's Top 5, which I didn't see.
I did see. What
Okay,
part
she
did
was.
play?
I don't know the name. I don't remember the character, but she's a very tall, large black woman. Very domineering, commanding force. She was probably very loud and brash, if I had to guess, because that's the part she plays on Saturday Night Live as well. She's funny.
Okay.
And I think she got a lot of recognition for even that bit part. She has been a good writer on Saturday Night Live. My fear is I've just seen her too much in live TV settings, and it's a little tough.
Well,
she doesn't quite get it as well.
It's confusing to me because you say that this is basically a reboot, not referencing the old, but yet the old had 3 whiteys and 1 African American, and this one basically has 3 whiteys and 1 African American. So that's weird to me that they would follow that same
little bit
formula.
I read a little bit of what's supposed to be a plot synopsis, and of course, it's still very similar. It's one of them is a big scientist.
Okay, so is Melissa McCarthy is going to be Bill Murray?
No, I think
give a rundown of who. Obviously, Leslie, is that what you said? Her
yes.
name? She's going to be the Winston character.
I think they're actually going to mix it up. I actually think Melissa McCarthy will be the Winston character.
Really? Okay.
Well, she'll be the add-on. Kind of like a Louis Tolley type of role almost. That's what I'm guessing. She'll be a Ghostbuster, but maybe one that's like added on, fighting her way.
So that's a Ghostbusters 2 reference when he really becomes a Ghostbuster.
Like she has to fight her way onto the team type of thing. No, actually, I understand Leslie Jones is going to be like a high level scientist, which is cool. I think
so
that's
she's
awesome.
going to be the Egon role, maybe.
Yeah, something like that. And then I think Kristen Wiig is going to be more of our Bill Murray character. And Kate McKinnon may be a little more of the straight character. I don't know. It's going to be interesting.
I would like Kristen Wiig. I like her a lot, but seeing her being kind of the cool, laid back, that would be really interesting for her to do like a Bill Murray type. Yeah. That'd be really interesting.
I hope they mix it up. I hope they don't just try to run a photocopy over the original one and say, oh, well, we got the same stereotypes. Let's drop people in there. Let's have a slightly different plot, but the same idea. They got to decide to go put their money together and go start up Ghostbusters, and they become famous. And I hope they go a whole different route. I really do. I don't know where they're going to go with it. But
when is it? Is it in? They just announced the cast. Is it for 2016?
Next summer, 16, I believe. Okay. Yeah. So they're still a little over a year out.
Okay.
Very interesting. I think there's going to be a lot of eyes on this production. I hope, and I feel like I can. I mean, I can go in this with a fresh frame of mind. I mean, I love the original Ghostbusters. It's one of my top 10 films.
Right.
I don't really need anybody to remake it, but if they want to start a whole new chain of stories around these characters, fine by me. Go for it.
Are they going to
make it good? That's all it is.
are they going to be able to refrain from having any cameos?
No, I don't think so. I think they're going to have to squeeze in a cameo just by...
I mean, if Bill Murray would actually agree to do it, there's no way they're not going to have him in it because they'd be like, oh my gosh,
and there was a rumor that
agreed.
he's already said he's going to appear because he really likes the choices they made with the women.
Really?
He really likes that approach of an all-female Ghostbusters, yeah. Huh. So if he does make a cameo of some sort... Actually, you know what would be fun? If he was actually like the Peck character, the bad guy in the movie.
Oh, yeah.
Wouldn't that
actually,
be funny?
Okay, let's take it to another level.
Mm-hmm.
He's the bad guy. He's the Peck character. But just like Ed Norton did in Birdman, which we all admired him for, play with the stereotype that you have become. Ed Norton, the stereotype is very hard to work with, very controlling, and can be very arrogant. Give Bill Murray that role and let him say, okay, people say I'm kind of a hermit, I'm kind of egocentric, and let him just eat that a lot and become like that would be awesome.
It'd be funny.
Be kind of an interesting
Could
commentary.
Be good.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm ready. Bring it on. I'm ready to see it. I'm excited to see it, but I'm also not going to be. If it's not any good, it didn't kill my childhood. Okay, I still have my DVD copy and my Apple TV copy of Ghostbusters. I can pop in anytime I want to.
So you're saying you're going to be able to erase it just like you did Kingdom of the Crystal Skulls.
Yes, exactly. I still love my Indiana Jones original trilogy, even though every time I watch Crystal Skull, I hate it more and more. So yeah, basically yes.
Fair.
What have you got for us on the news?
So we're talking about remakes, reboots, something that is not a remake or a reboot, but they've spent plenty of time in between entries into this genre, or entries into this storyline. Danny Boyle, he gave us 28 Days Later. Okay. I loved it.
No, I never saw it.
You never saw it? Okay.
Nope.
Did you see the sequel, which was 28 Weeks Later?
No, I did
Probably not, because why would
Nope.
you? Different director, but the screenwriter and the director, Danny Boyle, Alex Garland, basically just produced it, but then they were kind of hands off. I actually still liked the sequel. It wasn't as good as the first one, but this, it was at the beginning of all this zombie onslaught. Like it was kind of a
28 Days Later was really one of the first zombie films of the modern era to kind of come back out.
Yeah.
To kind of get everybody talking zombies again. So,
right. So, I really liked it. The sequel wasn't as good, but it was still not bad. Well, now they have said they are in time. And I thought Danny Boyle basically, he makes a successful movie. He doesn't, to me, seem like Mr. Sequel guy. Yeah. He's not really interested in that. But he has been in talks with Alex Garland, the screenwriter, and he's like, 28 months later, they want to do it. They say they have an idea on how to make it work, and there's something they want to examine within the franchise, and they're like excited about it, and they say that's going to happen.
Okay.
So you haven't seen any of the other two movies.
No, I haven't.
But you like Danny Boyle, right?
I do really like Danny Boyle.
Okay.
28 Days Later is one of the few Danny Boyle films I have not seen. Actually, it may be the only Danny Boyle film I haven't seen.
Wow.
Which I don't know why. Every time I think about his filmography, I just never remember that one. So
I think you need to. I think you need to check that one out.
I'm a huge fan of his work, so I definitely need to check it out. Especially, I'm a big Walking Dead fan now. I like the zombie genre in general. I thought World War Z was actually a better film than I expected it to be. I mean, I'm ready for bring me on another zombie film.
And see, World War Z, I liked okay. But the thing is, I kept thinking about 28 Days Later because it was similar in tone.
I need to check it out. I really do. I wish I had more of an opinion to give you. I'm like, hey, if people like the first two movies, go for it. I like the concept of this whole 28 number and keep rolling with that. So.
What I also liked in the segment I read about it online was, of course, the interviewer couldn't help but follow it up and say, so 28 months later is going to happen. So are we to also expect a 28 years later? And the guy's like, okay, no.
No, let's not be ridiculous.
I mean, he said, it could happen, but I really doubt it because, we have an idea, but let's not be too stupid.
Sure.
So I admired him for at least calling it, and hopefully he, will stick to that. But I thought that was interesting.
The next thing I wanted to ask, my other news item was really not as much news. I mean, I don't really want to talk too much about the specific film and the criticism on it. I want to talk more about the concept, the philosophy behind it. So Selma.
Okay.
Selma's out in the theaters. It talks about Martin Luther King and the March in Selma, and it depicts a true historic event and the civil rights movement.
Gotcha. Unfortunately, neither one of us have seen it.
No, but it is playing locally, so I plan by the end of the weekend to have seen it at least.
Right.
Supposedly in the film, there's Lyndon Johnson, the president, is portrayed in a certain way that maybe he's portrayed a little bit more of the enemy, the villain to Dr. Martin Luther King.
Interesting.
A lot of controversies come up about that, saying, well, that's not true. Even people from Johnson's kind of lineage and family tree are saying, no, that's so wrong, because he was actually very supportive of the March on Selma and Dr. King and everything else. But the film portrays him not that way. Now, again, I'm talking in generalities because I haven't seen the film. I'm just what I've read. But it did start kind of a conversation in my head that I want to talk with you about.
Okay.
I recall back to one of our very first Footcandle screenings many years ago. This is before we were even in the theater. This was just when we were in our office on a Thursday night, popping in a DVD and watching and talking about it.
Is this the discussion after Talk to Me?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
The film Talk to Me, Don Cheadle playing a famous disc jockey that broke some racial barriers and other things back in the 70s, I believe. We watched the film about him called Talk to Me, which is a good film. I liked it until I read about how much of it was fabricated for the film. And it really made me angry because it wasn't just a matter of they just spent a little bit here and there. They made entire sequences where he went on the Johnny Carson show, the Tonight Show at the time. He never did, I've come to find out. And they recreated the whole scene to make it seem like a true historic event, and it never actually happened.
Right.
So now we're hearing about that with Selma. It made me think about it with the Imitation Game, thought about it with other things. Where do you stand on the whole idea of if a filmmaker wants to make a film about a true historic event, should they keep it 100% true? Should they have that liberty to float the facts and make it more of an entertainment machine? Where do you stand on? Do you have an opinion at all?
Well, yeah, of course I've got.
Of course, you have an opinion.
If you're not making a documentary, then there's license there.
Okay.
Now, so if you choose, like Talk to Me, you choose to kind of invent some. I think completely inventing a Tonight Show performance is one thing. If you want to say they went on national TV and you don't really mention that, then that's fine. Even if they never went on national TV, does that make? But actually grounding it in something real, that I kind of do have a problem with that. From what I understand of Selma and the stuff that you're talking about, I have heard some people kind of discuss it, and it's open to interpretation how unsupportive or supportive LBJ is. It's kind of just left. Yeah. It's kind of, left a little ambiguous, and I think that's okay.
Because if it is truly ambiguous, I'm okay with that.
Because you're not making a documentary. Obviously, what you're doing is you're making a movie, and movies take chances to make dramatic tension higher or lower, and it would depend on how it's handled. For instance, throwing back to our Imitation Game review when we were talking about the choice of whether or not to use information, and that scene just kind of went a little bit too far, and I wasn't sure if it was true, but I was really I was going to be irritated if it wasn't true.
Right.
So it's kind of a thing where it depends on how it's handled. And since you and I haven't seen it, I kind of hard to call.
It's a little tough to talk about Selma, but
I do think dramatic license, even in a film that is, and then it says, like it said on the beginning of Imitation Game, based on a true story.
Right.
So that's different from when you don't even throw that line up or you accept everything as fact. So, Imitation Game is very clear at the very beginning.
Well, here's the line I think I've kind of come up with, where I feel like things cross the line on falsifying historical events or true stories in the film. I think it's when, like you alluded to, when there's a layer of tying it to something else real and factual and making it, shoehorning it into something that didn't belong there, like the Tonight Show.
So it's the difference between a white lie and a lie.
Yeah, there's that.
A white lie is just saying, okay, they went on national TV. A lie that's worse is when you say they went on the Tonight Show and you give them that extra layer.
I think there's that, when they're actually falsifying and recreating false footage to make it look like something inside what should be a real biopic film.
Got you.
Now, the other side of the coin, the thing that concerns me, if LBJ, and again, we'll watch the film. I hope to be able to give a review back in the next couple of weeks and weigh in. If they paint LBJ in some light that is not historically accurate, this is a famous figure in our history, a famous figure with family, generations still alive and here. To paint somebody in a completely wrong situation and paint them in a very unfair, unflattering light when that was not the case, that's where I think I draw the line. I mean, basically my rule is, if you're going to make a real person look bad just for the movie, you got to understand that is going to have an effect on their family, people, how they perceive them in history. And that's unfair.
Sure.
That should not be on a real thing. Now, if you wanted to make an Inglourious Bastards, okay, which is not real.
No.
Hitler was not massacred at a movie theater. It was all done up fake.
Right.
The whole story, is fake. Okay. So there's not even any glimpse of it saying any of this is real. It's pretty clear once you get into the film that this is all made up as we go along. Taking a historical figure out of Hitler and all. Okay. Have whatever storyline you want because everybody knows this did not really happen. Mm-hmm. There's no way anybody could walk out of that theater and think, oh my gosh, is that really what happened in the story?
That's crazy.
It's not. But in Selma, it is, this is real. This happened. These are the way it happened. And I think if you do end up painting somebody in the wrong light, and that's a real person, I think that's really pretty shoddy. Now, again, we're not saying that about Selma because we have not seen the film. I do want to see it and kind of comment on it, but I just wanted to make that dialogue about the thoughts on real versus quote real in the movie theaters. And I think sometimes it's a fine line. They got to balance. It's make it entertaining or make it, where people are going to be upset and it could possibly damage people's reputations and all. That's the balance line you got to have.
Got one more story for you.
Okay,
Alan.
well, let's do one more then.
The expression third time's the charm. So this year, in 2014, so last year, now that we're in 2015, we had Noah, then we had Exodus of Gods and Kings. Both disappointments, one more than the other in the box office.
Yeah, Exodus definitely was a huge disappointment.
Right.
Yeah.
Noah critically wasn't well, but did okay.
Did okay.
I've seen Noah, didn't bother seeing of Gods and Kings, but I want to.
Yeah.
Okay. We are slated for another biblical remake, and it's another throwback to like the Ten Commandments type stuff. They're remaking Ben-Hur.
Oh, yeah, I've heard about that.
Morgan Freeman is going to be the slave trainer guy, and then a show that I have not watched, Boardwalk Empire, a star of that, Jack Houston is actually going to be the Charlton Heston dude.
Okay.
So is third time going to be the charm? And another little added thing, which I should ever get you to. So if you were an investor, would you say, okay, this is going to be it? I think probably not.
You got to tell me the director.
Right. Director, Timur Bekmambetov or so, I can't remember. It's a Russian name. He made Night Watch, which is a film I like. He made Nine, which was a film I liked. Okay. Then he made Wanted, and he made Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter.
Oh, boy. I really hated that.
But Night Watch I liked. I
never saw Night Watch, but I really hated Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter.
All right. Did you ever see Nine? The stop motion, cloth figure type?
No.
Okay.
I don't know. I really don't know. Okay. I don't know how I'd feel about it. I would be very hesitant on any religious-based big tentpole movies, especially a remake of an old classic film. I'd be very wary right now because I don't think the marketplace is digging them too much.
Right.
But
so this is going to be the third strike and you're out. This could be like if it doesn't do it.
Although, again, anything can happen. I mean, we see the first bit of footage from this, and if it looks interesting, if they're doing something different than the theatrical Ben-Hur version, the big spectacle version, if they do something a little different, who knows? It could be interesting, but the director doesn't give me a whole lot of confidence.
What's kind of crazy to me is, people, and I'm included me, I'm one of those, you hear about reboots and you're automatically like, oh, I'm so tired of reboots. Yet it seems like over and over again, they are successful and they do work.
More times than not.
And, I was excited about Noah because I was like, oh, wow, they're trying to reboot the biblical epic.
Reboot.
That should be interesting. No, they were there. They were trying to reboot the biblical epic.
Universe, yeah.
And it didn't quite work. And then they, of Gods and Kings, same type of thing. I'm like, oh, okay, it's 10 Commandments all over again. Christian Bale is doing the. I'm like, and that one, and we're not talking about, you're down on this director. We're talking. We have Darren Aronofsky. Mm-hmm. We have Ridley Scott. These aren't no-name people deciding to reboot this.
But they're not box office draws nowadays. Mm-hmm. Ridley Scott's heyday was in the 80s. I mean, after Blade Runner, Thelma and Louise. He did
Gladiator.
Gladiator was like his last hurrah.
Recent.
He has not had a big film since Gladiator.
In my mind,
Prometheus, I know, but still, that did not light the world on fire as much as it could have.
Yeah, right.
So I think he's a little past his prime, and I think you take a subject matter that not a lot of people were really clamoring for. I don't think you take an actor like Christian Bale, who is a good actor, but I don't think he's got the public's goodwill on his side as much. And the trailer, to me, just wasn't really that impressive. It looked like a lot of big CGI spectacle and not a lot more. I think you had all that together, it just wasn't going to work. Now, with Noah, I think Noah could have been even bigger if it was a different director. Aronofsky doesn't have the box office clout either. I'm glad they used Aronofsky. I'm glad they did something a little different. And it actually did really well for an Aronofsky film. You know,
Right.
it like was a huge revenue making for a Darren Aronofsky film.
Right. It was his biggest commercial exposure was doing Noah. Yeah.
So, but there again, I just don't think the audience is wanting these films. I don't think anybody's clamoring for these films.
Got you.
I think we're digging into stories that were done really, really well before. And I have no problem with remakes and reboots, but I just don't think the audience in general is clamoring for these things.
Okay.
So I would say no. If I was in Mr. Producer chair, somebody came to me with this idea. Now, if you told me we've got Michael Fassbender starring in Ben-Hur, and we're going to have
As in the Charlton Heston role.
sure,
Yeah.
and if we're going to have, let's see, who would be a good director for it? Somebody I would really get excited about. If David Fincher was going to do Ben-Hur with Fassbender in the lead, I'm like, okay, I'm good. Let's do it. You know, that's why to me it takes the talent to make that work.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Okay.
All right. I know I said I wasn't going to do any more news, but this is really quick.
Sure.
If you were to recast Indiana Jones, who would it be?
Okay.
No, I want your opinion, not who's getting batted around the news right now.
Okay.
Because it's Mr. Chris Pratt,
Right.
From Guardians of the Galaxy, all that. I'm not in favor of him being Indiana Jones, for the record.
I need to see how. The only way I would be is if he does a good job in Jurassic World, which I am not excited about that movie at all.
And I am.
The only reason I'm excited about it is because I really liked Chris Pratt in Guardians of the Galaxy, and it makes me want to see what he can do in that movie. Now, if he's really good in that movie, then maybe I would say into Indiana Jones. But let me clear my mind.
See, I would argue with you on that. I'd say if he's really good in Jurassic World, that's even more reason for him not to be Indiana Jones.
Overexposure.
He's got the cocky adventure character in Star-Lord in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Right.
If he gets to be the cocky adventurer in Jurassic World, okay, he's got 2 franchises. That's enough.
That's enough.
I don't need this guy watered down. I really like Chris Pratt. I don't want him to get watered down into every franchise now. So with that in mind, who would be a good Indiana Jones? Because I got a perfect one. We've already talked about it in the past.
Unfortunately, you've already thrown his name out this episode. So I'm going to say, and I would dare anyone to prove me wrong, Fassbender would be an awesome Indiana Jones. However, I'm going to sidestep that because we've already mentioned him, and Hugh Jackman. So I'm going X-Men.
Okay.
Name any X-Men. No, Patrick Stewart's too old.
You'll do
Ian
Patrick
McKellen
Stewart.
is too old. But I think both Hugh Jackman and Michael Fassbender, either one of those guys would be great.
All right. Months ago, there was a rumor of Bradley Cooper being up for Indiana Jones.
Oh, man.
And I was against it.
I'm not a Cooper. I'm not a Cooper fan.
Until Guardians of the Galaxy.
When you didn't even see his face or see him act.
I know what he looks like. I know what Bradley Cooper looks like. He can look like Indiana Jones. That's not the problem. I wanted the attitude. And actually, Rocket Raccoon had an Indiana Jones similar attitude. If he could put that kind of smart alecky attitude towards it, but still have the charm, still have the appearance he's got, I think he'd be a great Indiana
I'm
Jones
holding
now.
Silver Linings Playbook against Bradley Cooper.
And you shouldn't, because that's a really good movie.
And I disagree. But I'm really holding that against him. So I should let that go. He'd be fine.
I think he would be a really good Indiana Jones.
But
I've now come around on
Michael
this.
Fassbender has the look up and down of Indiana.
Maybe if you really want to get like a the same physical attributes type of look, yeah. But I don't think Bradley Cooper could be an interesting Indiana Jones.
It's like a blonde hair pretty boy. I don't think of that as.
But I think he's gotten away from that. I mean, granted, we haven't seen American Sniper yet, but
That's
supposedly
another
he's
one.
very
We
good in
gotta
that.
stare
I think he was really good in Guardians of the Galaxy. I liked him in American Hustle.
Yeah.
So you know what?
I liked him in American
I think
Hustle.
he's good. And I didn't used to think he was that great. But the last few films, I think he's really good.
Okay. Fair
All right,
enough.
Chris, I think we've hit enough news. Let's kind of wrap up our show. This is where we like to talk about the one film recommendation we want to make for you before you turn off the podcast, something that you may go and add to your either Netflix queue, go rent online, go find somewhere else on Hulu, Apple, wherever it may be. And it's just a film that it could be a big film, could be a small film, but just something we've either kind of came back into our memory we wanted to share and recommend for people to check out. Chris, what have you got for us?
Mine is one that is available on iTunes, streaming a couple of places, including Netflix, but it's a 2013 film, Like Father, Like Son.
Ooh,
and I think it was nominated at some point for Best Foreign Film. I don't know if it was 2013 or last year for 2014. But anyways, it's the story of two families, and it focuses primarily on a guy who's a successful businessman, and he's, driven by money. And he learns through a phone call from the hospital, guess what, dude? At birth, in the hospital, there's a little mix-up, and we switched your son with somebody else's son.
Oh, wow.
And so now your 6-year-old son technically isn't yours. Now, this sounds like fodder for like a stupid comedy or like a Lifetime movie.
A Lifetime movie, I was going to say. Yeah,
and
definitely.
It falls into neither one of those. It's I really liked this movie. It's very understated. The director was Hirokazu Koreeda, which I understand he's made quite a few films, but this is the first one I've ever seen of his. And a lot of his apparently are kind of intimate dramas, like focusing on like family dynamics and like, I just thought it was really interesting. Gives you insights onto things you've like the pride of the Japanese businessmen and all this time, and how they, the importance of family, yet the importance of being really, really dedicated to working and stuff like that. So it was really interesting. And the guy who plays the businessman, I thought he did a really good job. Fukuyama is his last name. I'm not going to try to do his first name, but he has the whole stoic demeanor and like kind of the expression on his face. But there are several key moments where that kind of falls away. And it doesn't fall away in this big, huge, weeping, sobbing, like Oscar moment scene. No, you can just tell he is devastated. There's a scene where he reviews some photos that were taken on a digital camera, and that is awesome. It was like a really, really good moment. So, Like Father, Like Son, highly recommend it. It's iTunes, Netflix, it's all over the place.
I've been meaning to see it. That's actually one that I know we even got recommended a few times in the Film Society to try to bring in and see if we ever needed an international film. So I'm glad you got a chance to catch that up with that. I have not seen it yet. If you recall, kind of going back in time, again, back to our predestination discussion.
Or unfortunately, Imitation Game, jumping back and forth all over time. But
if you go back to our previous episode, which was only like 2-3 weeks ago.
Sure.
I think you and I had a conversation about Tom Hanks. And some of the conversation.
And you were kind of down on Tommy.
Well, I need to clarify that a little bit. Because you and I did talk afterwards.
Was it all the people writing in and you're like,
yes,
okay.
It was the flood of email, all the hate mail towards me about Tom Hanks. And so I'm just going to go on record. I do think Tom Hanks is a really good actor. I have not been a huge fan of his work the last 10 years or so. But I still think he's a good actor.
His catalog.
I have missed some of the catalog, but let me say this. My recommendation is a film that I actually caught back up with this past weekend. I was going through my video library and just watching things that interest me. And I wanted to watch Philadelphia for the opening credits because I love the opening credits of Philadelphia. If you don't recall.
Is it Bruce Springsteen?
Bruce Springsteen singing Streets of Philadelphia. Yeah. And all it is natural footage of people on the streets of Philadelphia walking. Sometimes they're waving at the camera. Sometimes it's school kids playing. And it's just these nice tracking shots throughout the entire city.
Gotcha.
Just beautiful. It just worked. It was like a perfect music video to open that film.
I need to see that film again.
Yeah. Well, this is my recommendation. You do need to see it.
Okay.
Philadelphia is my recommendation. I'd forgotten how good that film was.
Yeah.
After I got into it, I got sucked in right away. And that to me is Tom Hanks's defining performance for me personally. Maybe because it hit me at just the right time in my life, too. Because
was it before or after Forrest Gump?
It was before.
Okay.
This was basically the first serious role he really had. He had done Big, which had serious moments to it, but it's still a comedy. Right. Big was still more or less a comedy. Now, this was the first serious movie.
Serious role.
Now, Jonathan Demme directed it.
Right.
And he did this right after Silence of the Lambs.
Right.
Which, man, you want to talk about a 1-2 awesome directorial
Well, and if I recall, he got some flack after Silence of the Lambs because of the portrayal of like gender and like transsexual, like, and so he got a lot of flack about that. And so then what does he do? But he ends up going to make Philadelphia next. And it was a very you talk about two totally different movies too. Yeah.
But I tell you, the 1-2 punch of that, just to know that this guy who, of course, after I saw Silence of the Lambs when I was in college, I'm like, I cannot wait to see what Jonathan Demme does next. Philadelphia came out. I'm like, awesome. That's great. I actually was a little more muted on it the first time I saw it. And it's more viewings of it. I've come to even like it that much more. I just want to point out, of course, we have Tom Hanks and Denzel Washington.
Yeah.
Tom Hanks plays a lawyer who gets let go from his law firm, he believes, because he has contracted AIDS and he's a homosexual. Denzel Washington is one of the lawyers that Tom Hanks approaches to represent him after going through about 9 other ones, he said. Finally, he does end up representing him, and they go to court to try to sue the company that fired him for that. But it's not so cut and dry. It's not a rah-rah story. It's not let's go stick it to the bad guys type of thing. There's a lot of ambiguity about whether the bad guys were really as bad as Andrew Beckett, the Tom Hanks character, really thought they were. There's actually a lot of scenes where you start to realize that maybe the big company didn't really know he had AIDS, and they really were firing him for other reasons and all. There's a lot of that.
I don't remember that at all.
There's a little bit of those undertones for a while that it's not, again, that we've won type of thing at the end. There's still that you just know it's a complicated situation. But there are 2 scenes in this film. They're right back to back too that I still think are one of the best stage scenes.
Okay.
The Andrew Beckett character approaches Denzel Washington, Joe Miller is his lawyer, at his office to try to get him to represent him.
Right.
He walks in. They haven't seen each other in a couple of years probably. Walks in. Andrew is now very gaunt looking, takes off his cap. He's bald. He's got some lesions on his face. He's shaking Joe Miller's hand, Denzel Washington. And Joe Miller says, what happened to you? You look, you sick or something? He's like, well, I have AIDS. Right away, the way Joe Miller responds, kind of this taking his hand and just kind of backing up real slightly, not obvious, just kind of a little backing up. And you kind of see him glancing at his hand like, okay, should I wipe this off? Should I do something? Right. It's like that uncertainty that I'm sure back in the early 90s, that was like paranoia for everybody.
Absolutely.
Then later that evening, and also in the scene, he's looking, as he's listening to Andrew Beckett talk to him across the desk, the whole time he's looking around his desk, examining the things that Andrew's touching.
Oh, wow.
And it's just the camera's just following his eye movements. Like it goes from Andrew's face down to his cup, to the mug. Then it goes over to like when he coughs at one point. It's like you follow his hand. It's like, it's so well done. Then we go to the next scene where Joe Miller's at home with his wife and talking about the day. And he's like, so this guy came and he's got AIDS and he's a homosexual. And it's some of the most frank talk I could hear a husband and wife having about homosexuality. The guy's like, you know what? I don't like him. It's like, I'll represent him. That's fine. It's the case, but I don't like them. I don't like their choices. I don't like their lifestyle. He kind of does a little dance where he's like pretending like he's a very stereotypical flamboyant gay person.
Right.
And it was like, wow, this was actually kind of a daring role for somebody to take because he's basically coming off as a big homophobic person.
Right. Sure.
But yet, it was very natural though. You didn't feel like it was being malicious. You didn't feel like it was painting a good or bad. It was just very, very real. So anyway, I really think Philadelphia is a good movie. And, I love Silence of the Lambs. That's still my favorite Jonathan Demme movie, but this is a really close second.
Question for you.
Yeah.
What happened to Jonathan Demme?
I don't know, but I looked at his filmography after this, and it's just down, down, down.
Have I heard of any of the movies he's done after this? Surely whatever he did right
Rachel
after
Getting Married. Didn't he do Rachel Getting Married? Wasn't that Jonathan Demme?
I don't know. It might be. Okay.
If he did that one, that's the only film I know of since Philadelphia that's any good. Okay. He did a film called The Truth About Charlie. He did, I think he did a remake of The Manchurian Candidate.
With Denzel Washington.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I saw that.
But none of those just did anything. So I want to say, though, Rachel Getting Married, I think that was him. I'm looking that right up now before we close the show because that will.
Yeah, I'm really interested because to have such a 1-2 knockout punch, and he had a drought apparently. But Rachel Getting Married, that was really well
Let me
received.
verify that because I just want to make sure I'm saying that correctly. Lately, the last several years, he hasn't done anything. He's done a lot of TV work. He did do Rachel Getting Married in 2008.
Okay.
Other than that, he did The Manchurian Candidate in 2004, The Truth About Charlie 2002, Beloved. Do you remember that Beloved film with Oprah Winfrey?
Oh, he did that?
He did that in 1998.
I've never seen. That's actually on my.
That was actually his next big movie after Philadelphia was Beloved in 1998. Then The Truth About Charlie, Manchurian Candidate, Rachel Getting Married. He did a lot of TV episodes for a while. He did a film called A Master Builder in 2013 I never heard of.
Was it a documentary or was it?
No, it doesn't appear to be.
Huh.
So, yeah, it's just kind of tape. Although Rachel Getting Married is a very, very good film.
Right.
I will say. That's probably 3 really good Jonathan Demme films from the 90s onward there. So, anyway, Philadelphia is my recommendation there.
Cool.
So I guess that wraps us up. The Imitation Game, playing in theaters. Predestination on iTunes, Amazon, Hulu, anywhere. Well, maybe not Hulu, but anywhere you can rent or buy movies. Then we talked about our news. Then we did our recommendations. We had Me with Philadelphia. We had you with
Like Father, Like Son.
Father, Like Son, the Japanese film. So a lot of good stuff to check out. We'd love to hear from you. Feel free to give us any feedback. Chris, how can people reach back out to us if they want to contact us in any way?
You can go to themesh.tv and click on the Footcandle show tab, and you'll go there. It has all our episodes. You can email us at info@footcandle.what is it?
Org.
Org, yeah.
Yeah, we're footcandle.org. Don't go to footcandle.com. I don't know what that is.
us.
We can't vouch for
Or
it.
you can send an email to info@themesh.tv, and that'll get to us too. Just mention you want to talk to Footcandle. Alan and I are both on Letterboxd, so you can check out our stuff there. If you want to specifically find, especially, I know Imitation Game, probably not that hard for you to find, but Predestination, we're in the show notes. We try to provide links that'll take you to like where we see these films on iTunes and stuff. So make it really easy for you to be able to find. And our recommendations, same thing. We try to give you links to those.
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely a lot of stuff to check out. We'd love to hear from you. Can I go ahead and just tease a little bit too for some stuff we got coming up this fall?
Sure.
Is that okay?
Yeah, something big coming up this fall.
Something big. We just announced it to our Film Society members last week, but we are going to be hosting the very first ever Footcandle Film Festival, September of 2015. That's this year. That's in about 7 or 8 months. September 25th through the 27th of 2015. Be held right here in beautiful Hickory, North Carolina. We're going to have films running an entire weekend. Really looking forward to it. It'll be a lot of fun. If you are a filmmaker listening to this podcast and you have a film that has been made in the last year or so or is finishing up this year that you'd like to submit, you can go and we will have a link on the footcandle.org website. Here, I'm doing that here in the next couple of days, but you can either go to footcandle.org and follow the link to the festival site. Or if you really want to type in a longer URL, you can go to footcandlefilmfestival.com. And that is actually our official site for the festival. We've got a place where you can contact us or sign up for updates, but there's also a page that will link you right to our submission page. You can submit your films. It is an open submission process. We will take documentaries, we'll take animated, we'll take dramatic, we'll take short, long, doesn't matter. Being a first year, we're not being overly choosy on the types of films. We're going to open it up and see what comes in. But we'd love to see your films if you've got anything to submit that you want to enter into a film festival. This will be the real deal. I mean, we're doing it right. We're going to have a jury screening committee. There'll be prize money, award, everything. So big deal. Going on September 25th through the 27th in Western North Carolina. Visit footcandle.org or more specifically, footcandlefilmfestival.com to make sure you can submit your film, or just to give us your email address if you want to be kept in the loop.
Right.
We'll let you know when tickets go on sale for the screenings and when the screenings are announced and everything else. Should be a lot of fun. We're excited about it. It should be a lot of fun. So that's going to wrap us up for today. Thanks so much for listening. We appreciate all your support and attention to the show. If you have any questions, let us know. We'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, we will talk to you next time, which I think next episode we are going to talk a little Oscar predictions. Is that correct?
I believe so.
We're going to try to squeeze that in. We're getting close to Oscar time, so we need to go ahead and get our predictions on the table so we can see how woefully wrong we are when the actual awards are announced. So everybody take care. Thanks a lot. We'll talk to you next time.
See you in the ticket line.
Special thanks to Carpal Tuller for the show theme music. For more about Carpal Tuller, visit www.carpaltuller.com. You've been listening to The Mesh, an online media network of shows and programs ranging from business to arts, sports to entertainment, music to community. All programs are available on the website as well as through iTunes and YouTube. Check us out online at themesh.tv. Discover other network shows and give us feedback on what you just heard.